Good morning. Good morning. Can we have everybody's attention? Calling the meeting to order. I'm Chair of the HART Board of Directors, Pat Kemp. Please silence all your electronic devices for the duration of the meeting, and welcome to the January 9, 2023 regular Board of Directors meeting, which is now being called to order. The meeting format is hybrid, with board members physically present at the HART Administrative Office here and able to participate via hybrid online. Please look at the screens of your devices where an image of the flag is displayed and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Staff, can you please take attendance?
Yes, Madam Chair. Director Castor indicated she would be late. Director Frazier?
Here.
Director Hudson?
Here.
Director Johnson? Chair Kemp?
Here.
Director Knight?
Here.
Director Myers? Director Owen?
Here.
Director Schisler?
Here.
Director Vieira?
Here.
Director Williams indicated she would be late. And Director Wolstel. You do have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Do we have anybody participating online? I guess not. Okay, next we'll go to public comment. Is there anyone who wishes to make public comment at this time?
Madam Chair, we do have a comment to be written, that was written to be read into the record, if I may
Okay,
proceed
I'm
with-
not going to allow any more comments that are done by email. If people want to come virtually or come to the meeting, but I'm not going to have comments read into the record. Yes.
If I could, Julie Mandel, General Counsel, you have to at least take the comments and place them into the record, whether or not they're read out or not.
Thank you.
notwithstanding.
That's an excellent point, and I think we need to start doing that and place it into the record. But and as a matter of fact, any of the emails we get, but I don't want to any longer entertain them that way.
As long as they're placed in the record, that should be sufficient.
Okay, thank you, thank you. And seeing no further comments, we'll move on to the election of HART officers and vote on the HART board appointments to other boards and HART board committees. Ms. Mandel, HART General Counsel, will chair the process.
Thank you. As is our usual process in January, we will have the election of officers. At this time, I will take any nominations for Chair of HART Board.
I would like to nominate Councilman Luis Vieira. And I think Councilman Luis Vieira would make a good chair moving forward. I think we have had challenges this year. We continue to face challenges. And I think he'll be a strong and a good leader for the future.
Thank you. Thank you. Second.
You don't technically need the second, but we'll accept the second. Are there any other nominations? Seeing that there's no other nominations, I'll ask for a vote to appoint Councilmember Vieira as chair.
Director Frazier?
Yes.
Director Hudson?
Yes.
Chair Kemp? Director Kemp?
Yes.
Director Knight?
Yes.
Director Owen?
Yes.
Director Schisler?
Yes.
Director Vieira?
Yes.
Director Williams?
Yes.
Director Wolstel?
Yes.
The motion passes, the vote passes.
Thank you. Mr. Vieira, you will
Do I-
assume the chair position. I will continue to chair for the purposes of vice chair, but and then we'll move on to the next item, but that would be appropriate for now.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody, for that. I really, really appreciate it. For former Chairwoman and County Commissioner Pat Kemp, I've known Commissioner Kemp for almost 20 years, which is funny. And, you know, her public service goes long before County Commission as a Bay Area legal services attorney, an aide, I recall, to then County Commissioner Kathy Castor. She's always been a public servant, and we all appreciate your hard work as chairwoman during this very difficult time, and for your leadership and for your vigor. So I salute you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. And why not? Let's give her a hand. You know, this is a very, very difficult time, obviously, for HART, and I think that the number one thing that the public is looking for is transparency on the part of this board, competency, and leadership, and us telling it the way that it is. And certainly, I think that's what we all agree on 110%. We're all going to work hard to make sure that we make this transit agency the very best that it can be. And we certainly have miles to go in that regard on so many things. We also come from a very, very politically diverse county, Hillsborough County, as we were reminded in 2022. And I know that I appreciate the votes of Republicans and Democrats on this board and people who maybe don't share my political affiliation, because the issues that we're dealing with here are not necessarily politically partisan and whatnot. And I know that in the future, we're also going to see that diversity of political affiliation and other leadership positions here in HART and Chair, because again, the people who ride our buses, and the hardworking men and women who manage our buses, they're Republicans, they're Democrats, God forbid, maybe they're even independents or non-political, and everybody deserves to be represented. So let's go ahead and continue. Now we have, let's see here.
Vice Chair.
Oh, okay, so
Vice
go
Chair,
ahead.
I'll go
Ms.
ahead and
Mantell, go
continue
ahead.
to get through our officers and then turn it over to our newly elected chair. And congratulations, Mr. Vieira. Now I will take nominations for vice chair.
I have a nomination, Councilman Schisler.
Very good. Are there any additional nominations?
I nominate Michael Owen.
Michael Owens and Councilmember Commissioner Schisler, go ahead. Mr. Knight? And the third nomination is Director Williams. Yes. Are there any other nominations? Okay, so what we're going to do, since we have more than one individual, we'll go ahead and take the roll call vote of the names of who they would like, of who members would like to have serve in that capacity, and we'll just keep going until we can get a majority for one particular individual. So if you can call the roll call vote and indicate who you wish to vote for. Thank you.
Director Frazier,
Schisler.
Director Hudson,
Owen.
Director Kemp,
Director Williams.
Director Knight,
Williams.
Director Owen, Director Schisler,
Schisler.
Chair Vieira,
Owen.
Director Williams,
Williams.
Director Wolstel.
Owen.
Director Owen had the most votes with 4. Did you need me to read the other tallies?
You don't need to read the other tallies. What we'll go ahead and do is just take a vote on Director Owen to see if we can get a majority for Director Owen. If I can get a motion, please.
What do you need the motion for?
It's a motion to approve Director Owen as vice chair.
Move to approve.
I think Mr. Knight had gone ahead, so we'll consider yours a
Second.
second. Thank you.
Director Frazier?
Yes.
I apologize, Director Frazier.
Yes.
Director Hudson,
Yes.
Director Kemp,
Yes.
Director Knight,
Yes.
Director Owen. Yes. Director Schisler,
Yes.
Chair Vieira,
Yes.
Director Williams,
Yes.
and Director Wolstel.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to the secretary. If I can have a nomination for secretary, please.
Nominate Melanie Williams, Secretary.
Do I have any other nominations?
I nominate Wostel.
Nomination for Lost. Are there any other nominations? Okay, with no other nominations, we'll go ahead and take a roll call vote. Please indicate who you wish to vote for. Thank you.
Director Frazier,
Williams?
Director Hudson,
Williams.
Director Kemp,
Williams.
Director Knight,
Williams.
Director Owen,
Wostel.
Director Schisler,
Williams.
Chair Vieira,
Williams.
Director Williams,
Williams?
Director Wolstel.
Williams.
Williams had the majority votes.
If I can get a nomination for Director Williams to serve as secretary for the HART Board.
I nominate.
Can I get a second, please?
Second.
All right, very good. We'll go ahead and take a roll call vote on that.
Director Frazier,
Yes.
Director Hudson,
Yes.
Director Kemp,
Yes.
Director Knight,
Yes.
Director Owen,
Yes.
Director Schisler,
Yes.
Chair Vieira,
Yes.
Director Williams,
Yes.
Director Wolstel.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Vieira, would you like me to continue to just do the remainder of the appointments? Or would you
Yes,
like
if
to
you don't
just-
mind, because I didn't bring that paper with me, so go ahead.
I figured it might be easier for me to go
Thank
ahead
you,
and
thank you.
and do that. And I do have a question because I noted, these are the, just for the purposes of the new members, we have the selection of the committees. I believe a form would have gone out saying which ones you had expressed interest with, but I'm not sure everybody had had the opportunity to fill out that paperwork. So in terms of who's expressed interest versus the number of folks who actually can be on that, we can probably proceed forward with many of them with just a roll call vote as to the membership. But I'm a little concerned because I think some of the folks may not have had a chance to express their interest. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to make sure that we had that conversation, or whether or not we wanted to allow some time to express interest, and then we can take this up later in the meeting.
So
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
I
Go
just,
ahead.
when you, so do you want us to express interest for any committee at this time, or?
It appears that there is some indication of who has expressed interest to be on what committee, but it does not appear that everyone has had the opportunity to express interest.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if the new members haven't had a chance to fill this out, does this have to happen today, or can it happen at the next meeting?
Let me ask staff if they can discuss that. I'd like you to
fairness
have,
to the new
yeah, I'd like you to have an opportunity to express the interest that you all would like, so.
I think
yeah.
there's also conflict situations with the commissioners and some
Sure.
of these boards in terms of like timing, so.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, yeah, she's.
Oh, Miss, I'm still chairing.
Okay.
Miss
Okay.
LeGrand.
So just, my question would be for our next committee meeting, would we be able to keep the same committee structure or the same membership so that we can schedule the next committee meeting for January?
I believe that's what we ended up having to do last year because it
right.
was the same, this happens right after the holidays and not everybody has that opportunity. So why don't we just plan to have the committees with their same configuration, allow anybody who wants to express interest on what boards they would like to, committees, I'm sorry, they would like to be on, but also look at your calendars because sometimes that's an issue as well. And we can come back and move this to the next board meeting and do it then.
And then, so that would be for the HART committees, but the outside committees, do we want to, because I know some of those outside committees have reached out to staff already asking for the HART representatives for those committees. So, like the Disadvantaged Coordination Board, the T-BARTA Board, and the Affordable Housing Advisory Board. I think for the Affordable Housing Advisory Board, Commissioner Myers expressed interest, but I believe she's already on that board as a county commissioner, so unsure if she could.
She can hold over for that one. It appears
Right.
the only one that does not have a current member is the T-BARTA board. But the rest have, existing members that can hold over to the next month.
Yes.
And if I may, may I?
Yeah.
With regards to transportation disadvantage, I was supposed to be taken off there because of a private sector conflict. So if you want to go ahead and move to have Commissioner Myers formally replace me, just either this or next month, just as an FYI. I saw she expressed interest.
And we could go ahead, if is the interest of the board, to go ahead and take action to appoint Commissioner Gwen Myers to the Transportation Disadvantage Coordinating Board. We'll hold off on the alternate, even though Mr. Schisler has expressed interest to remain as an alternate, to give anybody else a chance who might want to do that. And if we could get some interest in T-BARTA, we can take action on those two items today and hold over the remainder until the next board meeting. So everyone can look at their calendars, look at the different committees, and make sure that that's something they're available for or what they're interested in. So do we want to go ahead and just take action then on the Transportation Disadvantage Coordinating Board and appointing Gwen Myers? And if that's the case, then I will need a motion to that effect.
So moved.
To appoint
Second.
Commissioner Myers to the.
Second.
TDCB.
Okay, yeah.
Ms. LeGrand?
Okay, so I think this was another committee that staff brought to my attention, that Commissioner Myers also serves on this committee as a county commissioner. So we don't think she can serve as a HART representative as well as a county commission representative.
Then, yes, that's the case. You cannot serve as both a county rep and a HART board rep. So let's hold off on that one and let that one roll over. T-BARTA is something that we do currently have vacant. If there's any interest in having that appointment today, we could go ahead and do that.
Chair, I have a question for T-BARTA, and I know that, I believe that the commission even redlined it for appointments because of, isn't it being defunded at this point? Didn't their funding get struck from the state?
That's, I mean, and that's my understanding. I don't know if Commissioner Kemp.
The funding has been repeatedly struck by the state, but it still exists. T-BARTA still
Okay.
exists.
Okay. Just
But it,
for a matter of
I
efficiency.
think it could just, I think you ultimately could, put an appointment there, but I don't think there's an urgency to it.
So would it be the will of the board, and we'll just have to let all of the outside agencies know that we're going to go ahead and hold off on all the appointments until the next meeting?
As a quick point, I just think it's really helpful when the questionnaires go out to make sure that the time and date of these meetings is included, because I think everyone's probably
That's a great point.
flying blind as far as when T-BARTA is. I mean, I know that's been a recurrent issue, particularly with the elected officials on here having like persistent time conflicts. That seems like probably best to wait a month to.
That makes a lot of sense to me. So why don't we go ahead then, and unless there's any objection, we'll table all of the appointments till our next board meeting. And in the meantime, we'll make sure everybody has all the information as requested by Mr. Hudson. And any of the outside agencies who are wondering what the status is, we'll just have to let them know. It'll be another month before we are able to get the appointments on there. And for our internal committee meetings, we'll just keep the status quo until the next board meeting, unless there's any other concerns or thoughts on that.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, you're going to resend an email out, and we'll get the exact date and everything.
Your staff will go ahead and get that sent out to everybody so that you can, you'll know, so one, you know what the meeting is, two, you know when it is, and three, whether or not you want to express, a check mark that you can express interest. We'll get that all tabulated at the next board meeting, bring that back to you, so that way we'll have an idea of who wants to serve on what and work through those appointments.
Thank you.
Unless anybody has any other thoughts on how to manage that.
Great. Anything else on appointments? That on boards, we're finished?
I will
Okay.
just ask for a motion to move that to our next board meeting.
Okay. May I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Kemp, seconded by Commissioner Knight. All in favor? Or actually, we,
Do you have
well,
to do?
We'll go ahead and take the roll call.
roll call, please. I'll get used to that.
Director Frazier?
Yes.
Director Hudson?
Yes.
Director Kemp,
Yes.
Director Knight,
Yes.
Director Owen,
Yes.
Director Schisler,
Yes.
Chair Viera,
Yes.
Director Williams,
Yes.
Director Woolstle.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we move to approval of the minutes. May I have a motion to that effect for the December 5th, 2022 meeting?
Move to approve.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Kemp, seconded by Councilman Schisler. Let's take roll call.
Director Frazier,
Yes.
Director Hudson,
Yes.
Director Kemp,
Yes.
Director Knight,
Yes.
Director Owen,
Yes.
Director Schisler,
Yes.
Chair Viera,
Yes.
Director Williams,
Yes.
Director Woolstle.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next we move on to presentations. We have HART Marketing and Branding.
Good morning. Congratulations, Chair Vieira. Good morning. Good morning, members of the board and Ms. LeGrand. My name is Arlene DiBenigno. I am the president and CEO of Conversa. We're a minority woman-owned marketing and communications firm located here in the Tampa Bay region. And we are very excited to be before you today. We presented about a little over a month ago regarding the marketing logo rebrand, and we are here to present 3 examples for you to hopefully vote on today. So the first thing that our team did is we took a look at the mission of HART, which is to take people to the places that enhance their lives, and the mission to be the highest customer-ranked mobility provider in the Tampa Bay region. We learned that the Hillsborough Transportation Authority was created in October of 1979 to plan, finance, acquire, construct, operate, and maintain mass transit facilities and supply transportation assistance in Hillsborough County. Today, HART provides convenient, affordable public transportation options tailored to contemporary lifestyles. More people than ever in Hillsborough County are discovering the benefits of HART, sophisticated yet accessible and rider-friendly network of transfer options. So the first thing that we did was take a look at the timeline. In May 16th of 2022 was when the board authorized the project. We then quickly moved to creating a list of survey questions, which was distributed to internal staff at HART for their engagement, and that took place between June and August of 2022. We then also engaged the executive staff at HART and provided them with the survey questions as well between August and September of 2022. Ms. LeGrand met with members of the board the week prior to Christmas, and I believe finished those board meetings on December the 23rd. We also presented some options to the public via social media, and then this past Friday, we presented a public workshop allowing the public to view the 3 examples and provide some input as well. Some of the interview questions that we presented to the internal staff was, what do you like or not like about the current brand identity? What's the story behind your current brand? Can you name a few examples of brands or other transit agencies that you admire? What do you believe people most associate with HART? Where do you see your brand in 10 years? Who is the ideal person that you are trying to reach? And what are your biggest pain points in reaching your ideal audience? Some of the feedback that we received from the internal and executive staff was that non-riders do not know what services HART offers. It's difficult to build community awareness when the fleet is covered with advertiser wraps. The brand needs to mean fast, convenient, reliable rides to get to my destination safely and quickly. The HART brand is not well known within the community. Often when people ask where we work, they do not know HART. Those that know HART typically know it as Heartline, which is the old name, and this demonstrates that we have not done enough to refresh our identity in the community. And inconsistent branding. Some stops have HART and some do not. So we took a look at a couple of the admirable brands that the staff mentioned, which were Utah Transit Authority, the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority, the Chicago Transit Authority, the Bangkok Transit System, VIA, which is located in San Antonio, Texas, Lynx, which is located in Orlando, and the Charlotte Area Transportation System. Our team defined a few brand words based on the survey, which I'm sharing with you today, but those that really stood out to our team when developing the logos were HART, futuristic, motion, direction, innovative, and destination. So the original branding, the feedback that we received from the staff is that it was a little flat, that the colors maybe didn't really represent the region. It was hard for them to distinct the brand amongst other brands in the area. It seemed a little outdated. It was difficult for riders to view the signage and differentiate from where one stop was to the other stop, and nothing really stood out for them. And in their opinion, therefore the public, it didn't really stand out to the public. So the first thing that we did is we took a look at the color palette, and we developed that really needs to stand out a little bit more. So our recommendations are the three colors you see before you today. The navy allows us to highlight that Tampa Bay is Florida's open water estuary, forming coastlines of Hillsborough County. The color navy signifies Hillsborough's intrinsic tie to water. HART's varied public transportation options enable the community to connect to many of Hillsborough's waterfront destinations. The powder blue defines the blueness of the skies of Tampa. This brand color exudes freshness, a nod to HART's commitment to reduce its CO2 emissions by 2026 and make Hillsborough a cleaner and safer place to travel. With the gold yellow, it defines the warmth of Tampa. On average, Tampa has about 246 days of sunshine per year, a marked increase as compared to the U.S. average of 205 sunny days. People seek Hillsborough County sunshine, and HART strives to deliver this sunny disposition through the use of this brand color. And now we'll go into the three examples that the team developed for your review, and hopefully you'll make that decision today. The first logo is a simplistic logo, which is the most memorable. The navy blue and yellow shape forms a sideways heart, which is a homophone for heart. It's easy to recognize, more digestible for the consumer to process. The logo shapes also abstractly form a Tampa City view from a passenger on a commute, the navy defining a tall building, the yellow the sun, and the light blue represents the sky. It includes HART's original blue color to maintain familiarity and not alienate audiences already familiar with the brand. There's a demonstration of what one of the HART stations would look like. The second logo is a simple, distinct appeal to all riders. It has a modern, high-tech style, which can attract new riders while appealing to a younger generation. The lowercase logo type expels friendliness, ease, and relaxation. The curved shape emulates the side angle of the front of a bus in motion, And also, we continued to include the blue color to maintain familiarity in the brand. The final logo is a basic geometric shape and lines which had become key traits of modern logos of today. The heart shape represents quality customer service and experience from field employees, which was one of the feedback that we received quite consistently from the heart staff. The use of the homophone also allows for us to create an engaging, relatable, and clever campaign which engages the community. And interesting enough, based on the feedback that we received from the public workshop on Friday, this was the brand that attendees most related to. Personally, our team feels that this lends itself for so many different opportunities in the community, including heart being the heartbeat of the community. So it's definitely very relatable. The simple design makes the logo more versatile and scalable for print and digital campaigns as well. And that brings us to the end of the presentation, and my understanding is that we would move today, I believe, to make a decision on the 3 logos, if the board would be willing to vote on that, so that we can continue to proceed with the rebranding campaign. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them today.
Thank you very much, ma'am. We appreciate that. Board Member Kemp.
Just a point of order, somehow the WebEx moved me to the lobby, so I'm not getting the presentation on here, and I don't even know what that means or whatever. It just, my screen went dark, so it's just a technical thing that I'd ask staff to, that's all.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Chair, I have a question.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Did we happen to poll the employees of these 3 at all? On which one they might?
They provided feedback to the survey questions, and then based on the survey, we developed the logo representation. I don't believe that they have voted, Member Wallstall.
All right, that's too bad. All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Any comment? Yes, ma'am.
And just so I make sure I understand,
okay. I
the
just-
outside
it was
feedback
almost-
that you have is from the general
didn't
public
know
and
what
they
that
like the
meant.
3rd logo? Was that what you were saying?
So the public workshop that was hosted by the HART staff on Friday, the feedback that was received and shared with us was that the attendees did like the 3rd one the most. They felt that there was sort of an alignment with that from a marketing perspective, yes.
Was there any feedback on the other 2 logos?
They liked that. They thought that they were positive, engaging, different, certainly, attracted the eye. But the 3rd one was the one that the staff shared with us, received most feedback.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. So I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Knight. Go ahead, sir.
Yes.
Go ahead, sir.
Like that, dark blue, yellow, what about torch red?
To the color palette?
Instead of light blue.
I'm sorry, sir?
Instead of light blue, how would torch red, what would that
I can't,
say? Dark blue, yellow, and torch
I
red.
think you need to turn your microphone on, because I don't think they can hear.
are you referring to the color palette?
Yes.
What's your question, sir? I'm sorry.
How would torch red, dark blue, and yellow go?
Torch red?
Yes.
We could develop that if needed. It wasn't something that we developed at this time. We tried to stay as close to the colors that we have, but again, based on the feedback we got from the staff, that was one of the things that they felt needed a refresh. So I think the navy is a little deeper than what HART currently has, the powder blue, and then adding that gold yellow to sort of make it pop and reflect the warmth of Tampa Bay.
Anyone else have any comments? Go ahead.
So, Mr. Chair, go ahead.
Thank you. I was just wondering, did you ask the employees? I thought I heard someone ask a question
Yes.
below, further down the table, and so they were asked for their,
My understanding is the survey that we developed at the beginning of the project, that was shared with the internal staff. I think Member Wallstall's question was pertaining to the final 3 logos. Were they surveyed? I'm not sure what the answer to that question is.
that would be my question. Have they had an opportunity to see the 3 options, and if they weighed in on those?
I don't believe, Ms. LeGrand, I don't believe that they were shared.
Chair.
Go ahead.
So that is a great question. We did have the forum and the meetings and the survey, but to land at this point where we're presenting the 3 logos, we have not taken it out to a formal campaign to glean which the employees like the best. What we have done is brought this presentation to the committee and received feedback from the committee, and a part of the feedback that was received in that committee meeting, I want to say was the 19th of December, if my memory serves me correctly. What we've done since then with the feedback was to have a public meeting. We're doing a social media campaign as well. We sent the survey out to all board members, so you had an opportunity to provide your feedback. Today, we incorporated some of that feedback. The hope was that if we could get some decision, and I appreciate trying to expedite the decision-making, but I do want to be clear, we don't have to land on a logo today. What we did want to make sure is that, one, that the board was comfortable with the direction that we're going. 2, if these 3 are sufficient and you feel that there's no need to do something additional or to provide some additional, I would say, examples, then what we could do next is a formal survey out to the employees to see what they would like and be able to bring that back to the committee meeting in a couple of weeks. I think it's the 23rd of January, and then be able to approve something, hopefully at the February 5th meeting, if that pleases the board.
Chair, I didn't want my.
And if I may, I think
Yeah.
Board Member Owen was first, and then Board Member Wassel.
I would
Go ahead.
actually like to hear because I was going to move to adopt 3. But
Okay.
listening to the board's palate for whether or not we want to continue it or not, I'll sit back and listen for now.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
I was just going to say, I didn't mean for my question to filibuster it. I was just going to vote with whatever the employees wanted because they have to see the logo the most. That's the only reason I asked.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
And I also agree that more input from the workers, and we don't have to need to make that decision today. And look
Yes,
at
sir.
some numbers.
So how about, would someone like to make a motion to that effect and maybe have it returned to us?
Yeah, I'll move to continue the choice of a logo until the staff for HART has been adequately surveyed or polled on which one they prefer.
Okay. We have a motion by
Second.
Board Member Owen, seconded by Board Member Wassel.
Can I just
yes,
ask-
ma'am. Go ahead.
One question. And I'm, just by the way, I mean, I think this is good. I think we need to move forward with improvement, and I think that, for too long, we've had buses wrapped in things that are actually alienate the public and really hurt us in terms of people, an impression about HART, as well as people do still call it Heartline. We haven't done a good job of branding, so, and I think this is just, having the gold in there just picks it up a little. It's to my eye, a lot of the colors we already have. But I am just anxious to move forward and do something with this, because I think it does hurt us. I do have one question. I just am curious about, because one of the things that the wrapping does is, and we've had some discussion about this, is black out the windows. So we've been talking about not having that happen, which I think is significant and important. And according to people that study this, that you're more likely to board or look at a bus when you can see people on there, or at least see internally what's in the bus when you just have these blackened windows. So I've been looking at HART buses that just yesterday morning, I watched a HART bus go by me, and it wasn't wrapped fully, but the windows were black. And I noticed sometimes the windows are black and sometimes they're not. And I've noticed that a bit on buses at other transit agencies. So if someone could just explain to me for a second the story to that and what we're going to do, because I think that is significant in terms of the look and the branding as well.
Do you know the answer to that?
Sure. Thank you,
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Chair.
Go ahead.
So some of the windows, you're saying it's the darkness of the black when it's not wrapped, and then you cannot see the people in the inside?
Yeah, just yesterday morning.
Okay.
Just yesterday morning in downtown, I was sitting at the sidewalk and watched a HART bus go by about 10 in the morning yesterday. I think actually it may have been the one, but I wasn't. And the windows were, it was not wrapped fully, and it had the logo down below, but the windows were pitch black. You couldn't see a thing, and it was like 10 in the morning.
Okay. Mr. Drainville, do you want to talk about our buses? And I know we have different series of buses, right? So we have some new buses, and I know that, you know, we do tint the windows because the windows need to be tinted
Right.
with the efficiency, but they're not supposed to be blacked out, so I'll just have them.
And also in terms of safety, I've heard that that's an issue just with
Exactly.
this wrapping. But, and I know from sitting on the bus, you don't want, or sitting in a car, we all know that experience where you don't, like the sun can be burning on you. So I don't want to affect that, but these were pitch black windows.
And good morning, Chair and board members, Mr. Grant. So yes, so there's specific specifications when it comes to when you create the bus specifications, and the tint is different stages of the tint. So, and one of the main reasons being in Florida, we got to go with the biggest tint is because of the cooling. But in my many years of transit, it's always been an issue. You know, local law enforcement, whether fire, have always had an issue with the wraps on top of the windows. They've never said anything to me about specific on the tint. It is, you know, legal under law of the tint with the spec we choose, but they've always mentioned about, you know, the wrappings on the buses for the safety concerns.
So you don't have anything kind of to add about, like, so we must do some, because I see through some of the windows and not others. And I just wonder if there's like some metric that we use, and if so, you know, obviously, I want to protect people, make the buses comfortable and efficient by having, you know, a good tint. I'm just wondering if there's a set metric on all the buses, and if we can establish a metric that will be protective, efficient, and I think it would be good in terms of the branding to be able to see somewhat into the bus.
And I believe we've been consistent. I know since 2017 on all bus purchases, we've been consistent with the specific tint, but we can look at that going further. And I would say there is protocols where a certain amount of interior light should stay on to help that visual inside the bus too. So.
I'll just ask that, that be looked at, because I think that's significant to the branding as well.
Absolutely.
Do you wish to make that as a motion or just a?
Okay, I'll make it as a motion. Maybe we could, I didn't know whether, but I'll make it as a motion. You know exactly what I'm looking for here, so maybe we could.
And so let's first, if I may, deal with the motion that I think was made by Board Member Owen and seconded by Board Member Wassel. Now, when is that going to come back to us? Do we need to set a date for that, for coming back, or?
Yes.
The results of the survey? Or?
So what we'll commit to coming back with the results of the survey at the committee meeting on January 23rd. I believe that's the committee meeting date. So we'll bring it through committee, and then we'll take that same presentation with feedback to the next board meeting, which
Okay.
I believe is February 5th.
Marvelous. Okay,
Okay.
good. Oh, yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, one more thing. I thought in the committee meeting, we all agreed that lowercase letters was out of it. We all agreed to so whatever the plans is, if it's going to be 3, that it didn't include lowercase letters.
May I respond?
Yeah, fine.
So that definitely was feedback that was received, that the committee did not prefer the lowercase letters, but we committed to bringing the whole presentation with the updated information to the full board for the full board's consideration. So if what we'd like to do is change that one logo, the one that is lowercase that has the shape that looks like a bus in motion,
Correct.
if we'd like to either do away with that one, or do you want to change that to, Arlene, if you want to talk about,
I mean, we can
we
do
could
one
change
of-
it to uppercase, maybe?
We can. We created the font based on the curvature of the actual physical logo so that it demonstrates motion, but we can certainly, to the member's point, we can certainly demonstrate that in an uppercase as well.
So we could do it one of two ways. We could take what we have currently to the employees and have them vote on what we currently have, or we could modify this one, specific one, to all uppercase and then have the employees vote, or we can add another one that's uppercase, whatever you prefer.
If I may, can we have it as a fourth option? Would that?
Well, we said we didn't want it, but we're not asking the staff to pick one of the three. We want their input, right? So whatever, part of it. But I'm just saying, in lowercase words, letters, is that in whatever they come up with, whatever we come up with, then so be it. But let it be inputted with them part of it.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Upshaw Frazier, did you have a question?
No, it's okay.
You sure? Okay, thank you. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I have a question. Are there any other changes being made to the bus in addition to just the branding? Do we still have bicycles or on the front, or are there any changes made internally? And will this brand transcend to the internal aspects of the bus?
Whatever brand is chosen will transcend into the internal. And once the final brand is chosen, we will then come back with a variety of different examples demonstrating the new brand, including images in the interior, the website, any pamphlets, information that's distributed to the public as well. So we'll bring back a variety of examples.
Board Member Hudson.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, did you have anything else, or?
I just
Go
wanted to
ahead, and then-
understand is the bike rack, was it eliminated or in this picture for purposes
We
of
include a render
showing
that
the?
has the bike rack.
It was just, correct. It was just for this particular one, it was removed just for the branding purpose, but obviously we would move to demonstrate branding using the bike rack as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Board Member Hudson.
Yeah, just to reiterate that, I just think it would be helpful to make sure that the renders have the bike racks, just so there isn't some confusion about
Sure.
this going beyond the scope. Thanks.
Absolutely.
And let the record reflect that Mayor Castor has just joined us. Go ahead.
Yes, and I'd just like to also reiterate that there was very much agreement, I think totally, in terms of capital letters for HART, which I think is important. So I'm not sure, I didn't quite catch the upshot of this is being, this rendering is going to be capital, or is it going?
Yes, my understanding of the present motion, correct me if I'm wrong, is that we take the three options that were presented before us, and we poll HART employees to be reported back to the committee on January 23rd and returned to us on February 5th. If Board Member Knight wants to present a fourth option, he can do so as a friendly amendment.
No, what I like is when it go to the board, go to the staff, that they have some input in it, not to take the three that we have, but also, I understand like the green color or some other things that they may have some ideas. Let that be part of the three renderings or four, whatever we need to vote on, that we get some input from them on it, not just take what we talked about today and let them vote on it. But
So are you saying then, to move this forward, are you saying that you want staff to potentially look at a fourth option?
yeah,
Okay. Is that a friendly amendment that you are willing to accept?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. And Board Member Upshaw Frazier, go ahead, ma'am.
Two questions. One, the first and the third logo, do they keep a lot of our current branding with the word HART the same without having the expense of having to go and redo all of that? I think that's significant to consider. I'm also hesitant, if we've already had the public meeting, we've already had the committee meeting, to go through another iteration of a logo that's either we're going to present it to the public again, or it seems to me that it's more expedient, prudent, and probably cost-effective to take the hard work that's already been done and present it to the public and move forward with that. If there was an issue presented about the second logo in committee, I'm assuming it has to do maybe economically with having to change things that the first and the third logo don't have to change. And so I would say maybe drop the second logo and present the first and the third to the employees and see where that goes, or just present it as is. That would be my preference, rather than going back to the drawing board and doing a completely another logo.
Are you seeking that as a friendly amendment?
Actually,
I feel like we have three amendments floating around.
I know, right? Are you finished?
That would be my preference, yes, I'm finished.
Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
I would think that that would be a substitute motion because it's
Yeah.
different, and I would second that if you want to make that as a substitute motion.
To have the first and the third. Okay.
That would be I would substitute that motion.
Okay. Now, Ms. Mandel, enlighten me again on what substitute motion, do we vote on the substitute motion
You
as
have to vote on the
replacing?
substitute now that you have a substitute motion on the floor with a second, you vote on that, and then if that fails, you go back to the original motion.
And that is for the first and the third
That,
options.
what I heard that motion to be is to go ahead and drop the middle item, the middle brand with the lowercase, present the first and the third. It would retain its character as you've looked at it today, as it was sent out to the public, and I think came out of a survey that did include staff. That's what I hear the substitute motion to be.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and take a roll call on that. We motion by Board Member Upshaw Frazier, seconded by Board Member Kemp. Go ahead.
Dr. Castor?
Yes, that is exactly, the second one was the only one that I didn't like, so
Yeah.
I appreciate that, and I wholeheartedly vote yes.
Dr. Frazier?
Yes.
Dr. Hudson?
Yes.
Dr. Johnson? Director Kemp?
Yes.
Dr. Knight?
Yes, and add the green for the employees.
Director Myers?
Yes.
Director Owen?
Yes.
Director Schisler?
Yes.
Chair Vieira?
Yes.
Director Williams?
Yes.
Director Wolstel?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, so then that will come back to us on February 5th, okay? Thank you very much, ma'am. We appreciate your hard work. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, next we move to the presentation for Transit Center Public Restroom Safety and Security Plan.
Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Myers.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, and let the record reflect that Commissioner Gwen Myers has joined us telephonically or virtually. Do you wish to say anything, Commissioner?
Yes, I had sent a memo over stating that I was going to be unable to attend and joining the meeting late due to the fact that I was chairing the Affordable Housing Advisory Board meeting this morning at 9 as well.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
We appreciate you. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Morning, Chair, fellow board members. This is LeGrand. Dale Smith, Director of Facilities. I'd like to start out by congratulating the new officers today. And I want to give you a brief update on the Transit Center public restrooms. I'd like to give you the opening schedules and the completed upgrades that we've already done so far. So Marion Transit Center was the first one to open on November 2nd. We kind of followed the same procedures and policies through all the public restrooms. The busiest one was Marion Transit Center. We were the first to open on November 2nd. We did a lot of upgrades inside that restroom, and it has gone well. Second, we opened on November 16th, the University Area Transit Center, again, following the same policies and procedures. And both of those restrooms are operating today and are operating well. In fact, at Marion Transit Center, our policies actually saved the life of a patron who was in the restroom in distress. The next restroom we're opening is the Net Park Transit Center. It's scheduled for January 11th, but the Net Park Transit Center has really given us a lot of challenges. When they constructed this originally, they built the door openings really wide. They had planned on them being the roll-up doors that are currently in place. They didn't really build this for the actual steel doors that we're installing. So the delays have been due to the front doors. The internal parts of the restrooms, all the fixtures, the lighting, the painting, all that stuff is already done. We're just waiting on the doors to arrive and be installed. So as soon as they're installed, we'll open the Net Park restroom. Each location will have an attendant and does operate from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. The two restrooms left are being evaluated as well. We have some same challenges in those restrooms. So once we get to those, we'll also discuss what's going on with those restrooms. At Net Park, we did order the steel entry doors. We're waiting to get those installed as soon as they arrive. Again, we had to order wider and taller doors than normal to get there. They were special order doors. We're putting up the same signage that we have on all the restrooms, notifying the public that the restrooms are for HART patrons only. We added all the new mirrors, the fast-acting hand dryers, the toilet accessories that we've done in all the past restrooms. And in this one, we were able to add new energy-efficient LED lighting in both restrooms. And now be open to any questions, please.
Thank you very much for that, sir. Any questions? Okay. There being none, we appreciate you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, next we go for our final presentation, the Basic Transit Infrastructure Program for the Shelter Project update.
Good morning, Chair Vire. Congratulations, members of the board, Ms. LeGrand, Linda Crescentini, Director of Capital Programs. I'm here today for a quick update on our new shelter installations. The shelters fall under the BTI, Basic Transit Infrastructure Program. So to date, there have been 64 new shelters purchased. HART purchased 61, and 3 were purchased by developers. We have 24 that were installed to date, the 21 by HART and 3 by developers. There's three different sections to the program. There's design, permitting, and construction. So in design, there's 7 that are current in various phases. There's 3 that are current in permitting, and there's 2 that are ready to go to construction. So this is a 5-year contract. It has 1 base year and 4 renewable options. We're currently in the 2nd year of the program with a not-to-exceed amount of $6 million. Total spent to date is just a little under $1,967,000. So we do include an update in each of the board packets for your information of the activities that happened that month. For the 3 different processes within the program for design, permitting, and construction. So they're readily available each month for your review. Any questions?
Thank you very much for that, ma'am. Any questions from any board members? Oh, yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Thank you. And this may be to Ms. LeGrand, but as I understand, the grant, and I guess the money from the federal government that Congresswoman Kathy Castor has so carefully targeted for our shelter program, I believe has now been approved and is coming to us. That's what I kind of thought this announcement would be. Do we have information about that at this time, specific?
So we did get notified by Congresswoman Castor's office that her earmark for our shelter program, which was around $5 million, had advanced through the Senate, and at that time we were waiting for it to find out if it had advanced through the House. I have not gotten an update as far as where it landed, but we are working to find out where that is.
Okay, I didn't know if this, but I believe we are receiving that, and I know she's done a lot of hard work shepherding that through, and I think it's so significant for us. And we're talking about branding our buses, and we have some of, the most, I don't think I have to tell anyone, but some of the most poor shelters, atrocious, just, at my street, which is one of the major bus routes, Route 1 on Florida Avenue. My stop that I go to is a pole with a sidewalk about 2 feet, and the only place that I could possibly sit, or if I needed to, and when fast traffic moving by, is a wall that was a half wall that was built by a former person who had the property. I'm not sure if the property is utilized now, but that's just, so many. I'll just tell you that we have a lot of people that have rightfully complained about this issue and how desperately this is needed. So I'm just really happy to celebrate that and to say this is good news. We really, really have a desperate need to improve our stops. I'll just ask one more question, too, with regards to this, which is the cleanliness, which for the first time I had heard. Some of it is maintained by us, some of it is maintained elsewhere, I guess, but I'm just wondering too, if we could be updated on that, because I think that there is an issue in terms of keeping those stops cleaned up. And, you know, I just would like, if we have another update, that we can start to focus on that, because I think it's an issue that we need to deal with.
Yes, ma'am.
So as it relates, and again, you know, it is going to be a great celebration when we get the final word if we did receive the grant that we applied for, so that definitely be great. As Ms. Crescentini stated, we have a program, we have a 5-year contract, which will allow us to then, if you will, put more shelters in those 3 buckets of permitting, construction, and design. Thank you, Ms. Crescentini. And then, you know, the reality is, we'll have the money, but it's still not going to cover all of our needs, right? So we have close to 2,500 stops, and we have several, I think it's around 600 stops that are not ADA compliant. So what we've been focusing on is prioritizing the areas where we're not ADA compliant to get that where it needs to be, and then going and prioritizing the specific locations for the shelters. And then also recognizing that, you know, I think a little bit in your description of your own experience, some of the right-of-way where we actually have bus stops today are not necessarily the best location to site a shelter or necessarily a stop. So staff is also going through this process, working with the TPO to identify all of our bus stops and then also assess if they're properly sited, and if it makes sense, sometimes it's just moving it to the next corner. So that we can have the right infrastructure, because our overall objective is to be able to provide some type of shelter at each one of our locations, but definitely a stop, or even they have these, they're not benches, but they're like little seats. I think you may have, they have them in Orlando and some other transit agencies. It's, you know, it's just, I don't know what you call it, but it's like a leaning seat where you can at least sit down as you wait for the bus. It takes up a little less right-of-way, but it still allows us to provide an additional amenity. So those are some of the things that the BTI contract will allow us to do. As it relates to the cleanliness of stops, Mr. Dale Smith, who's the Director of Facilities, his team manages that process. So what we can do is make sure at the next committee meeting, we can provide you with an update of our cleaning process. You're correct, some of the shelters and stations are cleaned by our advertising contractor. But as Dale would say, I'm speaking for Mr. Smith, all of the stops are HART stops. So if we see a stop that needs to be cleaned, we don't wait for someone else to clean it. We go out there and we clean it. And we've also been partnering with the city to find ways that we can leverage some resources, looking to acquire our own trash truck so it allow us to be more efficient. We have our own cleaning machine. You have a fancy name for it, Mr. Smith. What do you call it? The street sweeper machine that goes through, and we use that to clean up. So he can provide a full presentation on what he and his team is doing related to the cleanliness.
Thank you for all that. And I think that'd be really good, because I think we need to, it's of course, we're looking at the capital and changing these. It's a capital investment. It'll be a great thing. At the same time, operationally, it's, you know, cleaning is a issue, a problem. So I appreciate all of that, and I think we just need to probably focus and be thinking about that as well.
Mayor Castor.
Thank you, and congratulations to those who were the new board chairs and others as well. I agree with Commissioner Kemp. These shelters are a critical issue right now, and I'm speaking from the position of the city of Tampa. We have a number. Commissioner Kemp talked about Florida Avenue, Nebraska Avenue. Our code enforcement groups works hand in hand with HART and cleans up the Nebraska corridor twice a day. So thinking of the amount of litter and what's going on along that corridor, and we are addressing that from a holistic point of view. It's not just the bus stops. There are a number of issues along that particular corridor. One of the things that I would like to see coming from a law enforcement background, we get thrown a set of facts, make a decision, move on, and the sort of slowing the pace of a lot of these projects, I see the need for that, but also I see where there's the ability to move things along a little quicker. And I said, when I come back in another life, it's going to be as a planner, because we have a plan for everything, but not a lot of action in the implementation. I would like to see a very robust plan for these. I know that it's from a number of different angles. Ms. LeGrand, you talked about how many stops you have, but those that are the highest use and that are in the worst shape as far as protection for our riders. I know a lot of individuals that live in the Seminole Heights neighborhood that would be interested in taking the bus, but because of the condition of those stations, those stops, shelters, they choose not to. So we need to identify those. And then also in the design permit construction, I understand the need for that and the steps that have to be thoughtfully taken. But also I see that there can be a sense of urgency applied to that as well. I know you can't choose one shelter that fits all needs, but we don't necessarily have to go into a unique design program for every single shelter. So I would, and even though we haven't received the funding yet, if it doesn't come from Congresswoman Castor, which I am confident it will, if it doesn't come through that process, this is something that we have to do. So we've got to find the funding regardless of where it comes from. So let's continue with that plan, that very robust and timely plan, and then we'll find the money for it after the fact. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, sir, go ahead.
And again, good comments. Thanks. Along with the cleanliness of the shelters and everything, I'm getting a lot of calls and a lot of concern on safety too. I hadn't heard much on safety, but some of the ones that want to catch the bus, or they're getting harassed in different things in areas, and that's something that's growing. That is a concern that somehow, I don't know, when the CEO or in that area, and I even talked to Mr. Drainsville about it. So that's an area there that we got to somehow get on board with.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Okay. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Chair.
Oh, I'm
This is
Commissioner
Commissioner
Myers. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. I'd just like to say in District 3, we need shelters. Many of our ridership lives within District 3, and we have no shelters at all. So if we do receive funding, I would like to see some of those dollars used to build some shelters in District 3. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Go ahead, ma'am.
I just wanted to make one point of clarity. When we talk about the design, Mayor Castor, we have some prototypical designs. So we have a design for a small panel shelter, a mid-size, and a larger one. So I didn't want to give the impression that for every shelter we're creating new designs. We are not doing that. It's more of understanding which design will fit in which location based on the right-of-way that's required.
Yes. Oh, go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Yes. With regard, Ms. LeGrand, with regard to the $6 million grant, how many shelters are we anticipating being able to build from that?
So I believe it's a $5 million grant.
I'm sorry.
And in there, we did specify, I don't have the grant in front of me, but we did specify that we wanted to add shelters and also make the stops ADA compliant. I'll be able to get back with you and actually pull the grant application and tell you exactly how many shelters and how many ADA compliant projects we were going to anticipate from the $5 million.
Well, I'm sure the ADA has priority, in all regards, but I was just wondering because with the 2,400 stops, that's $5 million isn't going to go very far at the cost
Exactly.
of these things. Okay, very good.
I'll be able to provide that. Ms. Crescentini, do you recall how many?
So the numbers that we have is we can use the 2,500 stops, but out of those 2,500 stops, there's only 650 that have shelters, and of the 650, there's 350 that are end of useful life that need to be replaced. So It's not, there's not a shelter at every stop. However, there are 650 shelters out there today.
Well, I'm sorry if I may, the reason I brought that up is in Temple Terrace, we have 4 shelters that are existing now, and we're being told that they have to come down. They're in decent shape. They're not required, there's nothing really required to maintain them. But we're told that we're going to have to replace at least 4. And I'm just wondering if the best criteria for replacement is in place so that we're making sure that we're getting the most bang from our buck in this particular case.
We can list that also.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
One more comment, too. I think that this isn't just, as many other issues in our community, this isn't just the responsibility of HART. I know that there are a number of businesses that, if approached, would be happy to contribute to a shelter that would be of benefit to their team members as well. And then also, Ms. LeGrand and I have had several conversations about the plan to have businesses adopt those shelters that are stops that are in front of their businesses. There's one in particular, 2 in particular, on Nebraska Avenue. One business upkeeps the shelter and the litter that's around it, and the business across the street doesn't, and it's almost like a night and day. So making sure that there's someone, and even if that would be something that the board could look into with getting that private-public partnership moving in the construction and maintenance of shelters would probably benefit all of our riders.
Yep. Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Thank you. I think this is a good discussion. I do think there would be willingness on the part of some businesses to adopt, but I'd also, at one time I asked because I've seen shelters with lots of people standing around them or, waiting for the bus. The shelter is small and doesn't really work, and there's plenty of space to do something. I'll tell you in particular, this was like 5 years ago I asked about this. On Hillsborough Avenue, and this is in one of the top routes we have is Hillsborough Avenue, Florida, Nebraska, Hillsborough Avenue 56. Those are kind of like top ridership routes. And there is right there at the Walmart, which many times, it was more recently built, and they authorized, I'm not sure whether it was required to put in all those parking spaces or that Walmart wanted to do it. At any rate, I've gone there on Black Friday and seen that they have 200 empty spaces there. A lot of people walk through the store. They have, a lot of empty space that never, ever, ever is filled, parking space. Meantime, there's a bus shelter there that's very well used, right on Hillsborough Avenue. That is what they call a skinny bus shelter. It's like just right on the sidewalk practically and has, one-seater small. And so I said, why is that the case right there? It looks like there's lots of opportunity. Can't we just talk to Walmart? Can't we just do something about that? And then I was told that there's these policies of skinny shelters and more robust shelters. And, it just seems to me something like that, that it because of ridership, we could use a more robust shelter, but it would seem that we could also work with, at that time, and this is just a coordination thing between, I'm thinking, the county, DOT, the city, I'm not sure, to make sure that a more robust shelter could be there, because there's opportunities. And it's always a difficult thing, but I feel like it's a missed opportunity that we have this little teeny shelter. We have this huge empty parking lot behind it, that it could easily be pushed into that a little bit and in a prime space. And I've asked about trying to move some things, like, I just give that specific example, but I know there's many others, about moving that conversation forward in terms of that. I know it's a coordinating thing, but as long as we're talking about it here, I'd just like to bring that up as a possible focus and way thinking about moving forward, how we do that.
Yes, ma'am.
We will add all of this. I've taken copious notes. I know Ms. Jackson is doing the same. And Mr. Rodriguez in the back is giving me a thumbs up. So the BTI team will incorporate all these comments into the presentation and we'll present it on January 23rd. And those of you who are not in the committee, please join or log in and you'll hear the presentation, but we'll make everything available to everyone.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Next, we go to our Chief Executive Officer's report. Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, so good morning again. And I have a couple of presentations that have been requested that I go through. I'm going to try to do this as efficient as possible because it's a lot of material here. And I'm going to see if the clicker works from here. If not, I may have to go up to the front. Okay. So the first presentation I was asked to go through is the APTA peer review. And there were 3 peer reviews. I'm just going to give you the context. It's pretty dense. You should all have this in your packet. It's around 56 slides. So my intention here is to walk through this and then stop where you have questions. But, you know, again, you can help determine the cadence of this presentation. There were 3 different assessments done. There was, oh, it looks like it worked. Okay, great. There were 3 different assessments done. One was done on the culture of HART, one was done on our operations planning, and another on financial planning. This was a review, and maybe I should back up a little bit. I know we have some newer members to the transit space. So the American Public Transportation Association is a national organization that focuses on public transit in the U.S., and they also do work in internationally as well. They have this system called peer review, which is a little less expensive than consulting with outside consultants. But the value of going through an APTA peer review is what they do is they tap members from other transit agencies as well as other private sector companies to participate in really assessing how policies are implemented within a transit organization. So you're getting your assessment from practitioners who are actually doing the work on a daily basis versus, you know, a consultant who may specialize in something but doesn't actually do that work. So the peer review was conducted during the pandemic, so it was primarily virtual. It's interviews and talking to different members of the interview team or the peer review team. So this slide here just goes over on a high level the scope in those 3 areas that the peer review was focused on. We coordinated with the staff. This slide is talking about that. Okay, so the first peer review that's in our presentation here was the organizational culture. These were the panel members, again, reflective of different transit agencies across the United States. And this slide, again, goes through and identifies the HART employees that were interviewed. So there were 3 key observations and findings. Again, this assessment was conducted so that I could, as a new CEO coming to HART, unfamiliar with the transit agency, but familiar with some of the challenges just from being in the public transit arena. To really understand, if you will, to do some due diligence, what the baseline was here, where the opportunities for improvement were, and to help me to prioritize and build a roadmap, if you will, to move forward in the organization. So the key observations here were that there was a strong desire by a good portion of the staff to help make the organization better, that they care about the organization and their colleagues and want to be a part of the community and the services that they provide. Operations and maintenance is the high-level opportunity for positive change. The staff there will respond quickly to positive attention and direction. Administration is just the opposite. Staff are embedded, resistant to change, and unaccustomed to being held accountable. So there were recommendations, right? So it's not just about the findings. Again, the objective here is, you know, what are the opportunities to make improvements and how do you prioritize those? So the recommendation was to provided several, I would say, recommendations, but this is a summary of them. So they recommended that we yield significant impact in the immediate future, that some of the recommendations will also help to leverage the strengths of the organization and to build a strong foundation. So we'll go into the recommendations. So one of the recommendations was to create momentum around a new organizational vision. And some of the bullets here talk about the on-time performance improvements, the revisions to our markups, making sure we have vehicles ready, and then also having the right staff here, the workforce. These recommendations were presented, and at the same time as those of you who have been on the board, except for the two new ones, 2 new board members. As I started here, within 6 months to 9 months, I did develop my roadmap. And one of the things that I've consistently focused on was on-time performance. And we have been steadfast in ensuring that throughout the organization that we paid attention to on-time performance and everything that went into it. But again, here's an example of, the peer review identifying an area that we should focus on, and that was built into the work program. Another recommendation was to boost internal resources and accountability for achieving the vision. Here it talks about hiring or appointing a chief of staff, and really just to, I would say, to do a better job of balancing the assignments. So let administrative functions be managed by the chief of staff, and then let some of the more operational functions be something that I could focus on more and deal closely with the operations. The next recommendation is to obtain external support to align resources with the vision. So really working with external partners, doing some things like retreats and team building, just really to make sure that the whole organization is a part of developing a new vision. Again, this is something that we did in 2021. I looked at Commissioner Kemp. She actually participated in our wrap-up of our visioning session when we did an off-campus vision exercise where we had over 150 employees participate in building our new vision over a series of, I would say, upwards of 20 different meetings throughout the organization. But again, that came out of some of these conversations. Secondary actions were to rebuild the administrative functions, again, talking about the chief of staff and the role of the chief of staff, to restructure the Human Resources Department, create economies of scale, and also create a career pathway so people understand how they can grow within the organization. Also normalize internal communication, so have a formal process of communicating upward as well as downwardly, and also community engagement. So that was the end of the section for the culture, and this is the discussion section. Again, I'm presenting the APTA peer review, so it's not written from me to you, but this is written from APTA to me to help me to understand where to prioritize and where some of the issues were. But I can stop between each one of these presentations if you prefer, or I can just keep going. I'll take a pause. Okay.
Thank you. I'm thinking that perhaps this is a big bite, and I would really like this board to be able to focus and understand this. I did not understand, I don't think anybody on the board understood that these recommendations were issued in this way. If I had, I would have asked for a copy and wanted to see it. My first introduction to this specifically like this was when I read the Creative Loafing article that put it out there. I did not have an idea about it. I mean, I know that after it was brought in, and I thought that that was an excellent idea and was very excited and supported that. The results of that I never quite heard. And as well, I know that that there were, in terms of staffing, that we were going to look at what they had at PSTA, which is a great place to look in terms of a parallel model. I'd heard kinds of analysis about it. I think it's a really, I think each section of this is important, and I'm thinking, because I was the one who asked to have this, that maybe we could do, I would say now that maybe each month, because we'll be here till 3 in the afternoon, if we took this seriously, as well as the organizational chart that I asked for, and I'll say I asked for that as well because you can just go to many transit agencies, the county, PSTA, for instance, you can just Google PSTA organizational chart, and it all pops up, 10 pages of it, on their website, which I also would like this on our website. Now, we haven't reached that point yet. But I'd like to, I guess, make a motion at this time to move these other presentations so we can have a more robust discussion of this first part, which I think is important, and to move the organizational chart. I think it doesn't, to have meetings more than 2 hours long is not a good way to be reviewing these kinds of things, and I wanted to see how this would go. But I'll make a motion that we could, do each of these presentations. It's the first time I realized that there were 3 different parts of our administration here that were studied, and I think that that's, we got this great benefit of these experts from all over the country to look at what was going on here at HART and have the benefit of their insights. And I think that that's a really significant and important thing for us, and I was excited when I read it. I'd like to just move to have the other 2 sections, as well as the organizational chart, moved to subsequent meetings. I'd like to take each of these sections in further meetings. So I'll make that motion to do that so that we can have a better discussion, I think, of this first part now.
And did you want to say something, or?
Sure. I just wanted to also acknowledge, since we're in the discussion point, we also have with us today online, and this was something that Commissioner Kemp, you asked me to do late last week. We have David Carroll, the Chief Operating Officer of APTA, online to also answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion by Board Member Kemp? Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Board Member Hudson. Let's take roll call. And any discussion on the motion before?
Well, I can just say, as a new board member, I would appreciate that too, so I'm in support as well.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I would still like to take advantage of the COO that we have on the line, though, for the APTA.
Do you wish to ask him any questions, or?
I mean, if he can
Can-
give us...
Can I just say that the reason that I wanted to only deal with one of these right now was so we could actually look at it and not just have this whole, this is a lot of robust and good information, and it's 3 different topics. So I'm not precluding at all. In fact, I'd like to be able to have a robust discussion at this point about the first part. And that's why I
So let's,
suggested that.
if I may, let's take a vote on Board Member Kemp's motion, which was seconded by Board Member Hudson, and then you may make your inquiries if you'd like. Okay, let's go ahead and have roll call.
Commissioner Myers has her
Oh,
hand up.
I'm sorry, thank you. I need to learn how to see that. Commissioner Myers, I apologize, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My concern was, and I asked Mr. Grant last week, if the peer review could present this to us, to present the report, since they had done all of the work, that they be the ones to present the report to us and share their comments with us. So if at our next meeting, that they be prepared to give the report to us.
Ma'am,
Thank you.
did you have a response to that, or? Oh, okay.
Okay, so, Mr. Carroll, I think that was a question more toward you.
Sure, and good morning. I'm very happy to be here representing APTA. HART has long been a great member of our organization. The challenge with having the peer review members present to you is simply we're a year out, and it's unclear, what has changed over that year since the peer reviews since the peer reviews were first undertaken. I could certainly try to circle back to those peers. The peers are staff from other transit agencies. They volunteer their time to come in and do these peer reviews. So I can't guarantee I can find them. And again, I guess my question is the report itself obviously is relevant to your discussion, but it is a little dated at this point. So I just raised that issue for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Board Member Kemp.
Yes, I appreciate you being online, and I'd also ask kind of on the line of what Commissioner Myers did originally, and I understand the issues with it because it is outdated, and some of it's been addressed, maybe some others haven't been addressed. One of the things I really wanted to do as part of this presentation for the future as well is to see if we can get, and this is a gift, to be able to get this kind of expertise in and helping HART, and to see if we can get an updated, I realize it'll be somewhat different people at this time. I read about the expertise here. Some are retired, and wouldn't be available, but things have changed as well. And I think it would be excellent if this board could request, and I could make that motion after, but an update, see if we could get APTA in here again on all these areas so that we do have a fresh, look at things and see the direction we're going in, because I really want to see us move ahead and get the strongest possible organization that we can have. And I think this is a good way to do it. I applaud, and I was very pleased with Ms. LeGrand initiating this. But I think we could really use it to a better end, to have it be something that we know here and can move forward with as well.
Thank you. And then Mayor Castro. Go ahead.
I was going to say, may I suggest, as a way to maybe to do this with a little more efficiency, is I can work with staff and go through the recommendations in a tabular format, and then also provide in a subsequent column how we've addressed those recommendations. And then you will be able to see, if you call it more of a executive summary, if you will, what was addressed, what's not addressed, and if you want to move forward and do something additional, at least you'll have an understanding of what was addressed, what has been implemented, what has improved, where there's still opportunities to do some additional work, if that is helpful.
Thank you. Mayor?
And that, in essence, was what I was going to suggest as well, the update on the peer review. I also applaud HART for going this route and getting, as we saw, one of the issues with HART is a lack of resources on every level. And so to be able to avoid going out and contracting a consultant and being able to bring the best and the brightest in transit in to do a peer review of the agency, and then provide that to the new CEO and give it time to be able to implement those changes, look for resources, improve the morale, go through all of those processes, present that to the board, and then we could have an additional or the same or other peer individuals come in and provide that follow-up to see if the changes made were appropriate, thorough, and if any other suggestions were being made. I agree with the, going through each of these sections piece by piece. I think that would be very beneficial to the entire board. And I do understand that Ms. LeGrand brought this peer group in to do that objective observation and assessment of the organization so that she could develop her strategy around that. But it's beneficial, too, to the board to be able to see this report and to be able to discuss it for the benefit of the public line by line. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, let's go ahead, if no one else has any comments, and take a vote on Board Member Kemp's motion. It was seconded by Board Member Hudson, and then I know Board Member Rossel wants some questions, so let's do roll call.
Director Castor?
Yes.
Director Frazier?
Yes.
Director Hudson?
Yes.
Director Kemp?
Yes.
Director Knight?
Yes.
Director Myers?
Yes.
Director Owen?
Yes.
Director Schisler?
Yes.
Chair Vieira?
Yes.
Director Williams?
Yes.
Director Wolstel?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
I mean, if we're breaking it down, I just didn't want to waste the COO's time. I want to make sure that, I mean, there's some pretty concerning and eye-opening comments in their review, not even halfway through the document. So I just want to make sure that that doesn't get lost in translation if we pass it back down to getting from the people that waited for a year to get it to us, things like many interviewed seem to be in the dark about overall leadership vision or decision making, as those are pretty concerning comments. So I want to make sure that it doesn't get lost in our efforts to pass it back down to then again get passed back up. We're already a year behind in understanding what it was. So if he's able to come back, then I guess there's nothing lost.
Okay, thank you, sir. Go ahead.
And I just want to say to the gentleman who's come to speak with us, thank you for being here and spending your time with us this morning. And I actually have specific questions about the first part, and I'm not so sure it's for the APTA, but one of the recommendations was hire or appoint a chief of staff to ensure implementation of internal improvement plan. And I just, I know that you introduced someone, or I guess Angela Payne, to me on the phone call last month as being, is she now the chief of staff?
Angela Pay, yes.
Yeah, Pays, thank you. And did we have a chief of staff? Like, who was the chief of staff before that?
When I was hired, there was no chief of staff.
Right, but before you hired Angela in the last month, how about in the interim?
So the organizational structure that we had before, in the past when I got here, we didn't have a chief of staff position, and I didn't create any new positions. When I came here, as I stated, part of the assessment was to understand, what was going on in the organization. It wasn't a surprise or a secret within the transit industry that HART is an agency that's had a lot of challenges. There was a lot of information, again, in the industry about some of the previous CEOs and some of the challenges that they had there. So my approach in getting this job and understanding that it was going to be an assignment that required me to make some significant changes was to not come in and quickly change the organization. From my experience in doing this work for over 2 decades, if you're trying to make change, you just come in and you don't give the opportunity to hear from people, understand what they're doing, see where the strengths are. This is the same information that I presented during my interview, the same presentation and approach that I presented within my first 90 days as well as within my first 12 months, was really to listen and learn, understand the culture of the organization. And the part of that approach, which I did share with the board and you did approve to hire APTA, was for them to also participate and help me to understand quicker than me waiting for a whole year to talk to everyone, to deploy multiple people at the same time to have this type of assessment. Through that, there were some primary recommendations and there were some secondary recommendations. So several of the recommendations that didn't require for me to make a quick organizational restructure were the ones that I implemented first. So those are some of the ones that you'll see that have been addressed quickly. Some of the later changes are the ones that you recognize now, like having a chief of staff, which is a new position, hiring a chief delivery officer, which is relatively a new position that we had before. So that was an attempt of, again, assessing who we had internally, trying to find opportunities to advance people who were here in the organization, and then getting to a point where it was clear that going outside and bringing someone in was appropriate. And then you also have to remember one last thing is that first year, it was still COVID. So, none of us had ever worked in a pandemic before. I've done this work before for organizations that were going through changes. And sometimes you can move faster if the external world isn't falling apart as well as the internal world. We had monthly reports every month of our numbers going up with people getting COVID. The organization was still pretty much closed. We didn't want operators to be indoors. So some of what I wanted to do, or even presented in my interview that I would do within the first year, has taken really 2 years to accomplish, but it was deliberate. So that's the rationale of why it took a little longer to bring in the chief of staff.
And I'll just say, certainly, I think that there's been a lot of challenges. This is a primary action recommendation to hire a chief of staff, and I kind of considered, I know she was called the customer experience, but I guess to my eye, Terry Wright was, essentially wasn't called a chief of staff, but was a chief of staff. That's how I looked at it, but I didn't.
That is accurate. That position, the Chief Customer Experience Officer, was a position that existed here. And you're accurate. The role that Terry played was similar to a role of a Chief of Staff. So some of the responsibilities that were identified, she was managing those.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I just wanted to understand that, but I think it would have been very helpful for us as a board in terms of how we move forward and understood the organization moving forward, to have this information. It says here, one of the recommendations was retain a qualified third party to assess the current deployment of resources, in particular senior staff. Was that ever done?
It was.
Who was the third party?
We worked with the National Transit Institute, which I shared that as well. Again, it was over a year ago, but NTI did come in, and they did an assessment of our leadership team.
Okay. I think it would have been helpful for our board to understand or know that as well at the time. It's important in terms of an oversight role for us to recognize this internally moving forward. And I guess and I know it was very challenging coming in. I wanted to be extremely supportive because of that, and make sure that resources and assistance in every way was availed. And I think the first year was especially challenging. We've had 2 years now, so that we could look at things. And I think it's in the second year, it's been. I would have expected that we could have seen something like this and worked in terms of the board to look at how HART was moving forward, because I think it's been concerning. And so I'll let it at that right now, but I would like to make a motion at this time as well to request that APTA come back and update. I want to get the presentations in the next couple months, as I said before, but request that they come in and update what we have here in terms of these 3 areas, and make this kind of an updated piece available to us.
Okay,
So-
and go ahead, closing
Okay.
out, go ahead.
So a couple of things, and I appreciate your comments. And I know sometimes it's hard to, remember everything that happened, almost, 2 years ago, all right? So, and I understand, right, there's been a lot of focus on issues here at HART, a lot of focus specifically on me, right? A lot of focus on, am I doing things that are nefarious and not in the best interest of the organization, and I understand that. But this is what I can share. everything that I have done associated with this after peer review or commissioning other people to do the work has not been done behind closed doors. When I wanted to do the after peer review, I came before the board, we presented it, it's actually on the chart of our sole source awards. That was something, making sure that the board knew about awards that fit under a category that did not have to come before the board, still came before the board, right? So the peer review was one of the first contracts that was put on the sole source award that was presented before the board, and I presented what we were doing with APTA and why we were doing it. I do not recall being asked to do a presentation on an APTA peer review. If I was asked and I did not do it, that is on myself as well as staff, because as you see, Ms. Jackson, myself, we are all taking notes. We meet after all of these meetings. We go through action items to make sure that we're diligently capturing what is being requested. I do not recall this being requested. I'll also say is that as an organization, not just HART, all transit organizations, there are reviews that happen all the time. So this is not a one-off. We also had an APTA peer review on safety and security. We have FTA triannual reviews. We have audits. We have FDOT reviews. We have safety reviews. We do these reviews. Those agencies present the issues or the findings or the opportunities for us to make improvements. Staff gets together, we work on them, and we implement the change. If the board would like moving forward for all those reviews to come before the board, we can make that happen. But I do not want to leave this meeting with this perception that there was a deliberate attempt to not share a document from a CEO's perspective who was brand new that pretty much makes the case of all the things that I need to do to make this place better. There was no value in me holding this from anyone deliberately. Again, if it was requested and we missed it, I take full responsibility for that. When it was requested, of late, we made sure, we presented it. As it relates to the NTI study, that was also discussed. And I know I had some conversations with some board members, I'm not going to put anybody on the spot, to ask me specifically who NTI was. We actually went on the website together so they could understand what NTI did. So I know we have a lot that we're working on. This is not your only responsibility, being a HART board member, but we can make sure that we do a better job of presenting all the information, even putting it in a backup packet. Maybe you don't present it, but you have access to the information. So we'll do a better job on that moving forward.
And I know Board Member Wassel wants to speak, so go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I don't know if...
I'm sorry, wait, did you raise your hand first, or? Okay, then, sorry.
I think that, and were you finished, Director Kemp? I want to jump in here because now there's fingers being pointed, and it's extremely concerning, and I believe that the point that was, I believe was trying to be made was the board shouldn't have to request a document that says, and I don't know why a finger keeps getting pointed at past CEOs, because this particular peer review is pointing to new management. Specifically, staff feels demoralized that new management, not old management. So I don't understand why we're pointing the finger backwards. This was about new management. Staff do not feel valued and fear retaliation from new management. So this isn't something that the board should have to request. This is something that should have been offered up immediately because it's extremely concerning. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Board Member Schisler. And I apologize, on my left side, it's not the best side. Go ahead.
I would like to remind everybody that this was commissioned in February. The analysis was done, I believe, in April, and current CEO had only been on board a couple of months, maybe 3 months. At that point, and with all that was going on with COVID, we weren't even here. We were at the county building, separated by plexiglass. So to me, it's kind of difficult to cast a broad paintbrush over the new administration when we didn't even, I doubt anybody even knew where all the facilities were at that point. So I'm being somewhat facetious, but I mean, it's got to be, we got to recognize the time frame with which this was done. There was a significant amount of uncertainty with, we had been, 3 CEOs in a period of a year and a half, if I'm not mistaken, maybe even more, and there was a lot of consternation as to what was going on. So I would remind everybody that we got to look at the time frame with which this was done. So I agree that we need to do this again. We need to have APTA updated. Again, these were the recommendations. This is what's been done, and where do we stand now? This is what's important as to where we stand and where we're going forward. So we can't analyze something that was done almost 2 years ago and try to come up with a basis for some type of action on that when things have been done since then, and we need to know where they stand now with the original expectations or original assertions in this report. I'm glad that APTA's looked at it again. I would hope that they would, the updates could be included in the chart, the tabular form. This is what they said, this is what's been done, this is where we stand now. I think that would be very beneficial for us moving forward as to what's going to happen. I don't know, I've heard so many motions going back and forth. I'm not sure where we stand right now.
We're on the Pat Kemp motion, which I'm going to ask her to restate it.
Yes.
If you don't mind.
Yes, I don't mind at all.
Chair,
But I wasn't
Mr.
done.
Carroll also has a
I
comment.
wasn't really done.
I'm
I wasn't really.
I'm sorry. Go
I wasn't
ahead,
really done. I'm not trying to, Ms. Kemp, I knew you, I just wanted to make sure what motion was in front of us at this.
I understand.
Yeah, okay. But it's, we up till now have been a policy board. We stand to set policy, not micromanage. If we need to morph that, then we need to morph it, okay? With whatever our legal obligations are from Ms. Mandel. We don't, I'm not sure what we got to be careful. We don't go too far in what we're supposed to be doing. So I would just like to let everybody get on the same page with that, at least in my feeling, that as we move forward, that we stay in our lane, give the guidance to the CEO as we need to. If we need to change that lane, then let's change the lane and let everybody get in the same playbook. That's my concern. Then I'll stop there.
Did I miss someone on this side?
No, I was just going to ask for clarification on the motion as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Board Member Upshaw Frazier, go ahead.
Same question on clarification on the motion. Also, if someone could refresh my recollection on, I can't recall, what was the cost of the APTA review and what would be the cost of a refresher? I'm sure it's not gratuitous, so I would like that information as we're considering this.
Okay. So, I mean, is that something can be answered now, or?
Can we clear up
Okay.
the?
Mr. Carroll, go ahead, sir. I got it.
Yeah, so just 3 comments. One, this was done 2 years ago. I said a year ago before. It's been 2 years. And just to correct the statement that was made, or at least to give my comments on it, this was absolutely a look backwards. I think the CEO arrived in January or February of 21. We did our interviews almost immediately in March. And the specific focus was to figure out where the organization...
And, sir, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me
Very better. There you go. Go ahead, sir.
All right. So the focus of the peer review was very much to put a
And if I may, sir, you probably have to speak a little closer to your screen, I'm thinking, but
all right, I'm speaking very loudly.
you got it. Go for it.
Hopefully that's okay. So just again, the focus of the peer review was rear view. We were looking at what the new CEO was coming into, the status of the organizational culture, the ability to plan, and the policy and procedures in the finance department at that time. It was not intended to be an evaluation of where Ms. LeGrand stood vis-a-vis the employees. Second, peer reviews are very useful, and I'm thrilled that we have been able to do several for HART. They are not ultimately a replacement for someone to come in and do real serious analysis. Our folks come in, they do a series of interviews over a course of a few days and can make some very high-level recommendations, but it's not a substitute at the appropriate time to do a more serious analysis. It obviously will cost more to have a consulting firm come in or some experts, but the idea of a peer review is that it's really benchmarking by other transit agency members across the U.S. As to how this agency stands against whatever the issue is, the practices that are done elsewhere in the U.S. And third, our peer reviews typically are about $20,000 each, plus any travel expenses. I think in the case of these 3 peer reviews, I think we charged $50,000 for the 3 peer reviews altogether back in January, when this was presented in January, February of 21. So I hope that answered your questions.
Thank you. And I see Commissioner Myers has her hands raised.
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I do agree with Commissioner Wasto. This was an item that was brought up to us on the peer review by Ms. LeGrand, and we, as a board member, should not have to request. This should have come back to us automatically for discussion at one of our next meetings once the report was completed. And so if we have to request for information going forward, then we need to make a motion so that any item that we discuss, we need to know that we need to have a report coming back to us and not waiting for it to be requested. Those are my comments. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Chair.
Commissioner. And Mr. Carroll, I think you have your hand raised, sir. Oh, you don't? Okay. There you go. Okay, Commissioner Kemp and anyone else? Could you, yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I just want to reiterate, I've been a part of these peer reviews. I've had peer reviews in the organization that I worked in prior. And this, as was described, was at the beginning of the hiring of a new CEO, a request to have a peer review team come in, assess the organization, and then develop an objective overall view that could be utilized by the CEO and the board to craft a strategy and organizational change moving forward. So I think we're getting wrapped around the axle here on this particular report when we've all agreed that we can all communicate better in the future, and probably as a board, if we request reports and we specifically want to see the results of all of those, we can bring those forward. And I think that the CEO has indicated that in hindsight, it probably would have been a good idea to bring this report forward. But this was a look at the organization at the time that we hired Ms. LeGrand. And then, as it appears to me, the point of it, well, I know the point of it, was to provide a very objective view of the organization, the pluses and minuses, and then to be utilized by the CEO to craft that strategic plan moving forward.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, Commissioner Kemp, if you wish to restate your motion to see if there's a second.
Thank you. And I'll just clarify, too. Our role is not to micromanage, but our role is to oversight and to have responsibility for the bigger issues. And that is policy in terms of, how the organization moves forward. And I think we've had a lot of good strengths in bringing in planning and transparency in those areas. And so I think it's really important for us to kind of get this update again. I think it's a gift for us to be able to have this kind of expertise brought in and for review, and let us know moving forward what we need to be doing to make the organization work at its best, to policy-wise, what we need to make HART move forward in its strongest possible way. It's really incumbent to this community that we do that. So my motion is to have APTA come in. We still have the motion, we approved to have these presented in the next couple meetings as they are. But my motion was to have APTA come in and do an update and present that to us. And we all are aware that this is the kind of update that we can receive and look at, and that we can use that for information moving forward.
Okay, do we have, and yes, ma'am.
Can I comment on the motion?
Of course you may, yeah,
The motion
please.
is, I think that it needs to be very specific. As was stated, this isn't free. The amount, $20,000, $50,000 total for 3. But how about a motion that says that we receive these presentations that include not only the findings, the recommendations, but the actions that have been taken to this point, and then determine as a board the specific time we would like to have that peer review. I agree with having APTA come back in and do that review, but I don't want to have them come in prematurely where we haven't had time or the actions haven't been taken to satisfy the recommendations. So either to add that to the motion or to postpone the motion until our next board meeting after we hear the specifics of the recommendations tabulated with the actions taken.
I'll just say, that can be done as we move forward with the different recommendations. We can have that. But just approving this now, it's going to take a while to get it underway at any rate. And I think it's a very valuable tool that we could use now. And so we can still have that be part of it. But I think, in all ways, right now, having these move forward. And by the way, in terms of consultants, $50,000 is way less than any of the other consultants charge for anything like this. It's really, it's really an excellent opportunity. And I don't think it hurts us either way. We can certainly incorporate that as they come back on what's been said here, but maybe we'll find new things in new areas. I think it's time for us to have this tool. And, it's just a tool to be used as we move forward. And I think it'd be really helpful for us at this time. So, did I?
Okay, do we have a second? And go ahead, yes, ma'am.
So I'm just trying to understand the difference here. Commissioner Kemp, you want to move forward with hiring APTA to do a refresher of the prior report, and Mayor Castro, you're saying, let's wait until we get what the CEO has volunteered to provide, which is step by step, this is what was requested, this is what's already been done, this is what's outstanding? Is that what we're deciding between? Is that what the two motions are?
Well,
I
no.
don't-
No? Okay.
If I may, I think Mayor Castor was making some suggestions on Commissioner Kemp's motion, which she had her position on, and we're going forward with the motion, unless if you wish to make a substitute motion.
I just think that it's premature. So in that particular motion, I would vote no. I would vote, I can move that we wait until we have the information on what actions have been taken, and then have a discussion about when and how we could utilize APTA for a peer review, subsequent peer review on what's been accomplished and what hasn't.
Okay.
So point of order, that's a substitute motion then,
That's,
correct?
are you saying you're going to vote no, or are you making a substitute motion?
Both. I'll make a substitute
Okay.
motion.
Well, we don't have a second to.
Okay, so
Commissioner-
that's a
Second.
very
And
good
so
point.
first, we need to determine if there's going to be a second to it. If there's a second to it, then you could do that as a substitute.
Thank you,
but-
Ms. Mendel. Do we have a second to Commissioner Kemp?
Second.
Okay, we do have a second. Now, and yes, ma'am.
Move to end
I-
debate.
I'm sorry, what?
Move to end debate.
Well, no. I mean, we're going to continue discussion. Go ahead.
I would just like to say that it doesn't preclude doing any of that. We have months ahead to have whatever is in here. I mean, I just don't, I think we should just proceed with it. That doesn't, I mean, responding to any of this stuff, like you said, is all stuff that can be done, I imagine, in the next few weeks, certainly by the next board meeting. And, you know, this won't have, I mean, I just don't see where those things are in contrast. And I would like to move ahead to get an updated, so we can get take a temperature here and figure out where we are.
And so-
If I had, actually, I'd been asking about some of the issues that have come up with us and had asked some professionals in the industry and said, what do you do? And some of them, and I was told, an APTA review. And I was like, I said, oh, well, we've already had that, but I had no idea that there had been a, you know, an issued report. So I don't see that, and I can appreciate what you're saying, Mayor Castor. I just don't see where moving forward at this time precludes any of that, because that can certainly be done as part of this as we move forward in terms of this.
And if I may, before Mayor Castro, could you then state your substitute motion?
My substitute motion would be that before we move to re-engage APTA, that we hear from what progress has been made on those recommendations. And I understand that a move can be made to engage APTA, but I don't want to agree to spend $20,000 to $50,000, although that is less than a consultant, before we have the information at hand
Sure.
that would require that. So simplified, my motion would be that we wait for any board recommendations to re-engage APTA until we've found out, had a report from the CEO on what progress has been made and what has yet to be done.
Okay, do we
I
have a
second
second?
the substitute motion, and I'd like to make a quick comment.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
We didn't, as a board, engage APTA for the first survey, so I'm just not certain who determines the scope of that, how any of that works, and so it does feel to me premature to say we're going to re-engage them to do the exact same survey. I think it benefits us to see what's been done, what hasn't been done, so we see what's missing before we go and re-engage and spend the money. That, to me, that makes sense, and if, I'm not sure what the delay is, whether we engage them now or whether we wait, which I believe will be done by next board meeting. I suppose you can get that done by next board meeting, Ms. LeGrand. That
Yes.
month delay, I'm not sure the harm to the organization, because it does seem a little bit premature to me when we didn't engage APTA to begin with to set the scope of whatever that review was. So I second Mayor Castor's motion.
And if I may, go ahead.
I was just going to ask Ms. LeGrand, I thought that APTA was coming in and doing other surveys as well, most recently. So we may want to mention the fact that there are other reviews taking place that are more up to date, but they're in specific areas of the business that could also help this conversation and give us an opportunity to have this information that was 2 years ago, but we also have real-time information on other aspects. So that may be an opportunity to refresh ourselves if everyone is aware of APTA coming in, APTA being here on certain projects now.
And if I may, very quickly, Commissioner Kemp, then Board Member Knight, and then Commissioner Owen, and let's take a vote on this. Go ahead. Go ahead, ma'am.
No, go ahead, you can.
You sure? Okay. Commissioner, or Board Member Knight, then Commissioner Owen. Go ahead, sir.
3 peer reviews for the $50,000 for the money that was paid. They only did one, right?
No, there's
I'm
three.
You're, okay. Commissioner, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I'm not going to support the substitute motion, although I understand it. The reason is because I think the purpose that we want to get an update is because of the time that's expired. That doesn't change regardless of what information we get. And my understanding is this won't be done till after we have that information anyways. So I think it's a little redundant, and that's why I'm going to support the original motion. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, so we have a, and go ahead, ma'am.
And I'll just make one point about this. It's the CEO can't engage APTA without our approval. It's really us engaging APTA to do this. So just for the record, when that happens, it's under the direction of the board, and it's for the benefit of the organization. And that's always, where the bottom line lies.
Ms. Mandel, did you want to say something?
We need to take a, just procedurally, vote on the substitute motion.
Mayor Castor's substitute motion.
That's correct, which
Yes.
has been seconded.
Which was
So-
seconded by Board Member Upshaw Frazier. Okay, roll call, please.
Director Castor,
Yes.
Director Frazier,
Yes.
Director Kemp,
No.
Director Knight,
No.
Director Myers,
No.
Director Owen,
No.
Director Schisler,
Yes.
Chair Vieira,
Yes.
Director Wolstel.
No.
The nays have it.
Okay.
So we go to the original motion.
Shannon S. Williams.
Oh, I'm sorry, Director Williams, thank you.
Yes, Director Williams, I
Yes.
apologize.
Thank you for that. Now it's tied,
With
okay.
its- And
The
as
motion
you know,
is
the tie
tied. I
vote,
apologize,
it's-
Director Williams.
it says
Fails.
no action has been taken.
Okay.
So we can have this roll over to the next meeting,
Yeah,
or alternatively, we can try and see if there's another motion that can be taken, but you also are stuck on the original motion,
Yeah.
since this is a substitute motion.
Commissioner Kemp, would you agree to roll that over to the next meeting, given that we have more items on the agenda, or do you wish to have a vote on your particular one?
I'd just go for a vote now and see if we can move forward. As I said, I don't think there's anything contradictory about doing this and moving forward now. And I'd just like to, get moving on this.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Kemp, seconded by Commissioner Wassel, as I
Just,
recall.
I'd like
Yes,
some
ma'am.
clarification. Are we moving on the same scope as the first, all three areas, the first APTA survey? Is that what we're
Yes,
we're
I'd like
moving
to find
forward with?
out, I thought they were really operational. In fact, I think that these are the, operational, organizational culture, I think, is really important. And and then there was the financials, which, I also think is important and that we should be moving. But there's nothing that precludes Ms. LeGrand from, as part of this new update, them seeing what has been done and noting that, us understanding that. There's, I don't see this as a threat, but a help, a tool. And I think we can incorporate all of the things that have been done as part of that.
Okay, we have, and yes, ma'am, go ahead.
I just want to say that I don't think anybody looks at it as a threat. I just, as a steward of the finances for this organization, don't agree. I think it's premature to make a motion to spend $20,000 to
Chair, I call the previous question.
$50,000
And go ahead,
for a report at this time.
Point of
before we have
order.
all the information at hand.
And
So
we have a
there's
point of
certainly no
order
threat.
by Commissioner Wassel. Go
She
ahead.
does get to finish. We do go to a point of order
Okay,
that
thank you.
takes
I'll have to learn
precedent.
that.
And you could go ahead and make whatever statement you want on your point of order.
Okay,
And the-
Mayor, and if I may, sir,
No,
go
she
ahead.
gets to finish first, and then you
You're
can.
finished? Okay. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Okay, yeah, when a call to previous question is made, there must be an ask for a second. The chair doesn't have the right to just say no. So we've got a small group of board members kind of hijacking the meeting. I'd like to call the previous question.
In
You are
terms
correct
of
on the,
the-
Yeah.
yes, you are correct on that, on your original request wasn't to call the question, it was to stop debate, which does need to lie there unless somebody else wants to take it up, but he is correct that you need to, and I'm bringing up all my Robert's Rules of Order
Yeah, I'll
brain
have
right
to-
now.
yeah.
So if I'm not completely correct, forgive me, but you are correct on that. You need to take an action on I'm sorry, what you.
The motion.
Call the
by-
previous question.
Call the previous
Okay.
question. Now we need to
So-
call the question.
so
You need a
let's-
second to his calling the question now.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Now you call the
So
question.
now we go into Commissioner Kemp's motion, which we will be voting on, which is seconded by Commissioner Wassel. Let's take a vote.
Yes.
Director Castor,
No.
Director Frazier,
And-
Can we restate what we're
Okay,
voting on?
restate the motion
please?
succinctly, please. Go ahead. Commissioner Kemp, if you wish to restate the motion.
I would just like to move forward with an update to the 3 reviews that we had by APTA. And we can incorporate all the things that have been done in that we can, for certain, in response to it, so that so that we can have the most accurate update that we could possibly want, and the best information that would certainly be valuable. So, and I'm sure when they do these reviews, that they're high level but thorough, and that all of that will be taken into account.
And I just want the motion, not the rationale. Is
I'm
that the-
sorry. Okay, my motion is just to do an update, to engage an update now.
Okay, great. Okay, let's take a roll call. Did I miss anybody?
Well, don't you have to call the question first? Doesn't that have to?
Vote on the call the question first.
You have to vote on call
You
the
were-
question
yeah, sorry.
first.
We had a lot going on, so
Right.
it's, but we.
Yes, Chair, if I may, you have to call
Yes, sir.
call the question. Now, there has to be a vote on whether or not it ends debate on the mayor's position. Call the question, and then the motion should be stated again,
Okay.
if we're successful in that.
Let's vote on, then call the question. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Director Castor,
You'll have to explain to me what that, are we supposed to
So
vote to
a
whether or
call,
not we
debate
stop
on the
debate.
question?
call the previous question is just that we've had more than enough debate to finally answer the original motion. So I'm calling the previous question to end the debate. We need to vote on that, and then we will move forward with voting on Commissioner Kemp's original motion.
Yes.
Correct.
Because we're round robining now, Chair.
And I do believe that has to be a supermajority of the votes, or?
It does need to be a
And
supermajority.
I mean, I think we're
But-
all ready to vote anyway. Is everyone?
Instead of doing a roll call vote on
Let's-
that, why don't we just see if there's a unanimous consent to proceed forward on
Is there
calling the
unanimous
question?
consent to proceed?
Yes.
That's what I would
Yes.
think.
Now we
Okay.
can go to the
Now we
underlying
will
motion.
vote on Commissioner Kemp's motion. Thank you, ma'am.
I'm going to restart just for the record. Director Castor,
No.
Director Frazier,
No.
Director Kemp,
Yes.
Director Knight,
Yes.
Director Myers,
Yes.
Director Owen,
Yes.
Director Schisler,
No.
Chair Vieira,
No.
Director Williams,
No.
and Director Wolstel.
Yes.
The vote is tied, or the motion is tied.
Yes, it will be continued. Thank you very much. Okay, nothing for the chair's report. General counsel's report.
In an effort
was
not to
one
take too
other-
much
Oh,
time.
and
since it's been
I'm
a-
sorry, Ms. Mandel, go ahead.
I had one other report. It's very brief. So if you want to, this was not one that was asked to, can you make it go faster? Thank you. And then as staff is helping to advance the presentation, Director Williams made a comment request. And what I'll do is I'll provide all the other reviews that we've received on safety and security and operations, so that the board has all of that information. Okay, so this is on the Rider Advisory Committee. There was a request for us to share our updates of this group. So on this slide, you also have in your packet the full application to participate on a Riders Advisory Committee. But this slide is just giving you the highlights of the purpose of the committee. It's really to solicit input from our community of riders and to have them help us identify the needs in the county, as well as provide feedback on some of the changes that we've made, and also create a forum where we can discuss what's important to our customers, our riders, and I would say, as importantly, is for us to become a part of their network as well. So for the Riders Advisory Committee members to allow us to enter into their neighborhoods and share more information about HART. We've had 2 engagements thus far. Our first one was August 11th, and we had a meeting here in this room, and we talked about, it was really supposed to be a session to talk about the purposes of the Rider Advisory Committee, but most of the people who participated really just wanted to ask us questions and share some of their observations about the service. Director Williams actually participated in that one, so she was there, and it was a very robust, I would say, conversation. The second session we had was on December 14th. We had that here again outside. We had boards set up, and that was really to talk about our May service changes and provide an opportunity for the community to provide us some input. We also at that meeting talked about the cadence of the Rider Advisory Committee meetings, and also the community asked if we could hold them in a hybrid virtual option so that some folks who can't physically attend could also dial in. Our next steps, we've thus far received 38 applications to become a part of our Writers Advisory Committee. If you see that first table titled Current Application Pool, what we have here is we really wanted to make sure that the applicants reflected a diverse representation of the county. So we feel good with the 38 applications. We have some diversity there. And then on the right-hand side, that table, those are areas that don't have representation. But in some conversations, we did realize that some of the areas on the right-hand side may be destinations and not origins. So we're going to take another look, and if people are riding our system to some of the areas that we have identified as no representation, but it is a destination on some of the routes, we'll revisit that and maybe code it a little differently. But we're still working to try to get more representation from the areas identified in the column on the right. Our timeline is to continue to formalize our membership, contact those who have applied. This is a group that's open to the public, so anybody can come to a meeting. But as far as the actual members, those will be folks who are representing their community. They'll be taking things back to their representative communities and bringing input back to our process. We're going to formalize this process between now and the end of February with the intention of kicking off our formal meeting schedule and agendas in March. So that's it, quick update. We'll continue to invite you to these sessions and share where we are with them.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much. Nothing on the chair's report, so we'll go to general counsel's report.
Yes, and I'll proceed quickly. This has been a long meeting. This matter of the general counsel has previously come up as it is coming up on time to do an RFQ for legal services. But prior to that, both David Smith and I thought it would be appropriate for us to actually look at the policy as a board, workshop it, and have a discussion as to the manner in which legal services are currently provided and any, per the policy, and any changes you might want to make, because you do really have a hybrid here of having, currently Gray Robinson or whoever might serve in the future as the general counsel, but it's not a pure general counsel role. And you also have in-house agency attorneys that serve the day-to-day operations, and then you have certain legal services that are outsourced through contract. But before we go out to additional RFQs, I really wanted to take an opportunity to have that discussion. The policy is in your packet, but my intent today was to request a time to workshop this item where we had a little more time and everybody knew that that time was on the calendar. I know you're going to have a lot of items on your February meeting after our conversation today, and I think we have enough time. What I would recommend is if we put this either, I know it's harder to find a separate date, but we could put this at the end of your agenda on your March agenda, and that way it's in there, and I'd like to keep that discussion, if we can, to a half hour, 45 minutes at the most. I think that's all you need, but in the meantime, I'm going to put together some thoughts, and I don't want to call them recommendations because I think it's better for us to discuss that, but at least kind of give you some models that you could look at and make some decisions, because it's also a cost-effective question too of how you want to pay for your legal services. But as I always say about legal services, nobody wants to pay for them until they have no other option but to pay for them. So it's really a deliberate decision point as to providing those services, how we provide the services, and what those processes and those costs are. And I think March will give me enough time to do that. So that's my request, is to put this on your agenda in March, but as a workshop item with, maybe a 45-minute time limit, so that way everybody has an opportunity to put that on their calendar as that time.
Do we have any motions?
So moved.
Yes, ma'am. So we have a motion by Commissioner Kemp, seconded by whom? Was that Michael Owen? Commissioner, go ahead, ma'am.
And I'd also like to say, one thing we've moved to at the BOCC that might be helpful is to do these all virtually, so that no one has to be necessarily present for, then that makes it easier for everyone to attend.
If we want to go ahead and do this, well, definitely as a hybrid, as your normal course, but want to actually have this, I mean, we can even do it where it starts Monday afternoon, that March meeting in the Monday afternoon at 1:30, and that way, if that is an availability, it can all be done hybrid. There's no action that necessarily needs to come out of it, but I'll have some idea of what we want to do with the legal services, and then I can bring back a recommendation to whatever policy changes. And there's for those of you that are new to HART, and whenever we change our policies, there's a deliberate process. It has to have 2 public hearings, it has to be noticed, and so we wouldn't be able to take that action at that time either.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Roll call, please.
Director Castor,
Yes.
Director Frazier,
Yes.
Director Kemp,
Yes.
Director Knight is not here, Director Myers,
Yes.
Director Owen,
Yes.
Director Schisler,
Yes.
Chair Vieira,
Yes.
Director Williams,
Yes.
Director Woolstle.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Great.
And with that, I'll go ahead and work with staff to schedule a time on around that first meeting, for your board meeting in March, whether or not we do it directly after or we do it later in that afternoon, and make sure that there's availability. And as I said, it can be done virtually. That is not a problem.
Great, thank you. Okay, next, HART Board Committee reports for Litigation and Claims Committee meeting. It's there. Do we receive and file that, or?
So typically for the reports, they're included in the packet, but
That's-
we don't do presentations,
that's-
only
I-
if someone wants to discuss it.
Yeah, I would think so. Any questions on these? Litigation and Claims Committee or Joint Operations and Safety Finance? Okay, there be appearing none, we go forward. Let me get my back up here. Okay, monthly information reports. Any questions on those? Okay, is there any old business anyone wishes to deal with or address? I'm sorry. I always miss you.
That's
My
okay.
apologies.
That's okay. Thank you. I'd like to get an update on the maintenance building. Where are we with that maintenance building? And I can wait and for you to give us a report or update at a later time. I just want to get it on the agenda.
Okay. I can quickly tell you, and Ms. Crescentini, I think, is still in the room. We did go through a procurement process, and we have completed, or Ms. Zickerfus, sorry, Ms. Zickerfus, sorry. Ms. Zickerfus is the Director of Procurement. Ms. Crescentini's team is leading the actual project work.
Good morning. Yes, the solicitation is completed. We're negotiating right now. We're going to do a fact-finding. We did get the pricing from the top technical firm and doing a fact-finding, and then we'll complete the negotiations and award the contract.
And will we be able to provide any more details by the next meeting?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll be able to provide the details by the next meeting. Thank you, Ms. Zickerfus.
Anything else on old business? Anything on new business? Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm not sure whether this is from Ms. LeGrand or from Ms. Mandel. This board seats 13 members. We're down one, I believe, the gubernatorial appointment. We've had several votes now where we've split, and as a result, there's been some inaction at that level. What can we do to spur the governor's office to make an appointment so that we get to where we need to be, so that we can avoid some of these split board decisions?
I'm happy to respond to that. There are 2 gubernatorial appointments that have not been made. A couple of years ago, before actually the pandemic, because these have been, at least one has been not appointed since before the pandemic. We had reached out to the governor's office, but perhaps it's a good time for us to go ahead and reach back out to the governor's office to find out where they are on those appointments. I think during that time, there's been I think it's not, I don't think we're alone in the gubernatorial appointments. So perhaps it's a good time to reach back out and see what the status is on that.
How did we get out of balance then? Were we always at 14? I thought we were at 13, but we were always at 14?
Well, go ahead.
I'm not sure if this happened while you were on the board, Councilmember Schisler, but a few years ago, our board is based on population, and a few years ago, the city of Tampa, the census came out, and it determined that we went from 2 city of Tampa representatives to 3, which brought us to an even 14 instead of the 13.
Good point, sir. Good point. Anyone else? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I have new business.
Yes, ma'am.
I just, and I'm not, I don't know that we need to put this on the next agenda, what we need to do, but for one, I would like I believe that everybody on the board has been given, and I know we didn't go over it today, but the organizational chart, and can we post that on our website?
It should be on our website.
Okay, I
It
haven't
was
checked.
posted. Yes.
It wasn't in the past, but,
Okay.
okay, good, great, that's great. The other thing I'd like to do is, at the county commission, we are the ones that get emails all the time, and it goes to all the commissioners on the county commission, not just the HART board representatives. Numerous times, complaints about situations, and appeals to us, all the commissioners on the board. And what we need to do, there's no easy way to access all the members of this board. If you go onto the Board of County Commissioners website, you can just hit one button and put your complaint in there and have it be sent to all the board members on the county commission, even though they're not HART board members, and that's what people do because of the ease. I'd like to, and if I have to put this on as an agenda item and vote on it, but I think it would be reasonable for us to set up an email system on our website so that anyone can do what they do at the county commission, but that all the members of this board receive those complaints or issues or whatever it is, that it doesn't always land on the county commission and is incumbent upon us to do whatever. And I think a lot of board members are missing the kinds of information that we've gotten for several years now. And so I'd like to have that set up.
Would you like to put that in a motion or just as a request?
I guess I could put it in a motion.
Might as
okay?
well. Let's do it.
Okay.
Do we have a second? Second by Councilman Schisler first. Any questions on that? Okay.
The only comment I want to make on that, and I think it's appropriate to have as a motion and go ahead and see what action it can be taken. I think there may be some technical questions of licenses that, in terms of creating either a separate email address or something
Yeah,
like that. And I
for
think that's why
non-government,
traditionally there has not been, for example, my first question was, do individual members have a separate HART email address? And they do not, the board members. But what, perhaps part of that motion is looking into what it would take to create a separate board member email address, so everything gets funneled to that and then can be distributed appropriately. But as part of that motion, I think that's something in terms of the licenses from the technical
Feasibility,
perspective,
et
we need to
cetera.
be able to do.
Sure. Okay. Roll call, please.
Director Castor?
Yes.
Director Frazier?
Yes.
Director Knight, I'm sorry, Director Kemp?
Yes.
Director Myers?
Yes.
Director Owen?
Yes.
Director Schisler?
Yes.
Director Vieira, or Chair
Yes.
Vieira? Director Williams?
Yes.
Director Woolstle?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Great. Any other new business? Okay, there being none, I declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. Happy Monday.